Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the last time we talked about the divine names, right? If I'm not mistaken. So this section is the divine conflict. I'll start reading and then inshallah someone can volunteer to uh, pick up on the reading in a little bit. So you might have read this paragraph last time too. Uh, the multiplicity of relationships that can be discerned in God results in a multiplicity of relationships in the cosmos. All things in the universe manifest the effects and properties of the divine names. Even the conflict, quarrel, strife, and war that are found in created things have their roots in God. The cosmos is a great collection of things, and things go their own way, not necessarily in harmony with other things on the level where they are being considered. The names relate to each other in many different modes, some harmonious and some sufficiently disharmonious, that Ibn al-Arabi can even talk about conflict and nazar among the divine names. Because you've got names that are totally opposite to each other. So the properties of the divine names in respect of being names are diverse. What do avenger, terrible in punishment, and overpowering have in common with compassion, forgiving, and gentle, right? So that's like al-muntaqim shadid al-iqab and al-qahar. So what does that have to do with al-Rahman, al-Ghafoor, al-Ghaffar, and al-Latif, for example? So for avenger, al-muntaqim demands the occurrence of vengeance in its object, while compassion demands the removal of vengeance from the same object. So there's a competition between the names. So he who looks at the divine names will maintain that there is a divine conflict. That is why God said to his prophet, dispute, jidal, right? Dispute with them in the most beautiful way, right? God commanded him to dispute in the manner demanded by the divine names, that is, in the way that is most beautiful. If someone picks up on that ayah in Arabic, it has the same sentence structure as the one in Surah Taha. Call upon Allah or call upon Ar-Rahman, to whom belong the most beautiful names. So that's why he sees a connection between them. So that ayah shows you that there is a dispute and conflict even amongst the divine names. So the divine conflict has never-ending repercussions in this world. Um, wait, so let me do this. Yeah. So the divine conflict has never-ending repercussions in this world and the next, since all change and transformation can be traced back to it. Go ahead, Hannah.
Oh, sorry, silly question maybe. When it says dispute with them in the most beautiful way,
Yes.
is that when you're talking about disputing with the people who disagree with him, or is it talking about the divine names, some kind of direct discussion with the divine names? It just is obviously probably not, but it seemed like that just now when you read it.
Yeah, that's not a silly question. So that's why I want to go back to the Arabic. So let's just do this then. 1625, right? So, all right, Surat Nahl. So what we have, mm, 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 if that is the correct, no, that's not the right verse number. 16125. Wait, so I read that wrong. Let me just go back to it then. 16125. There. Okay. Now I can read it again. Okay, so in Arabic it is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. Yeah, so that's the verse, and then it continues. وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. So it's not an exact copy of the verse from Surah Taha, but yeah, so obviously the tafsir in the first instance of that is it's commanding Rasulullah to dispute with whoever, or Allah Ta'ala is commanding the believers to dispute with other people in the most beautiful way. That's in the first instance. Um, but in the second instance, Hannah, I don't see why you're not right. Yes, because you are ultimately disputing with the names themselves, but you don't see the names. You see what are called their loci manifestation. You see the things you don't that they control. You don't see them, right? But ultimately, you are disputing with the name itself. Actually, one name through you disputes with another name through them. That's how it is. One name through you disputes with another name through them, since a name is operating through you. So it's actually the name within you that's disputing with the names through them.
Huh? What do you mean?
Hi, Ghada, كيفك؟
Oh, sorry. I forgot that it's
لا لا
sorry,
بسيطة.
but I
لا لا
didn't
بسيطة.
understand what you were saying.
لا لا بسيطة. So we were just talking about this passage, and it's talking about how the asma are opposing. They're what's the word? They're opposite to each other. متقابلة. They're متقابلة. They can be متقاربة, or they can be متقابلة. So for example, المنتقم شديد العقاب, and القهار, that's متقابل to الرحمن غفور and latif, right? Because like المنتقم wants to remove what would have mercy on someone, and the Rahman wants to remove what would have vengeance or punishment in someone, right? So there is what's called a تنازع إلهي بين الأسماء. في تنازع إلهي بين الأسماء الحسنى. So that is why God said to his prophet, dispute with them in the most beautiful way, right? Because that dispute, that jidal, is rooted in the jidal al-ilahi itself. It's rooted in the divine conflict or divine dispute in itself. So Hannah, I think you're right. But it's not just that you're disputing with names themselves. It's a name through you that is disputing with the names through other things. Does that make sense, Hannah?
Yeah, alhamdulillah, as much as anything does.
Or as much as anything does, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
alhamdulillah. It makes sense, but yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, thank you.
So the divine conflict has never-ending repercussions in this world and the next, since all change and transformation can be traced back to it. In one passage, the Shaykh discusses the divine root of calling, an-nida, right? As for example, when God calls out in the Quran, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, or Ya ayyuha al-kafirun, Ya ayyuha nas. So that's the divine nida, the divine calling out. He explains that diversity and conflict in the cosmos stem from the fact that different names call the creatures in different directions. So did you get that passage or not? Because he always links these things back and forth. What's in the Quran with what's happening in the cosmos. Did you guys get that? Because I want to pause for 1 second. Because sometimes these things are said so casually, they can pass over your head. Like everything that happens in the cosmos is rooted in a Quranic verse, or even a Quranic verse is rooted in what's happening in the cosmos. So, like, the Quran is the book of reality. So it's not just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commandments for us. He commands us to do things. He only speaks in accordance with the way reality is itself. So every single verse you find in the Quran tells you something about reality. So when you find in the Quran the harf al-nida, and you find the calling and the nida itself, ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, ya ayyuhal kafirun, all that, that's because the divine names are calling you as well in the cosmos. But maybe you don't quite know that, but they're actually calling you. So like when you pass by like a person who needs help, for example, a beggar who needs charity, or a stranger who is in need of assistance, there's a divine name somewhere there calling you, saying, Ya Ghada, Ya Hana, Ya Saad, come help this person. for example. So, and then these names are calling the creatures in different directions. So the Shaykh Al-Akbar says, you should know that the divine call includes believer and unbeliever, obedient and disobedient. This call derives only from the divine names. One divine name calls to someone who is governed by the property of a second divine name. When it knows that the term of the second name's property within the person has come to an end. So you know how we're always what's called under the hukum. We are under the hukum of a divine name right here, right now. So a second name will call out to us when the period for the rule of that name comes to an end. When the hukum of that name comes to an end, a second name calls out to us. So like a really simple example is like fasting, right? When it's Ramadan and it's time to fast and it's, what al-fajr, and the call for Fajr prayer comes in, you have to begin fasting. So there's a divine name there calling you to fast. And that could also be the divine name, al-Ramadan. Ramadan is a divine name. And then when it's time to break the fast, a second name calls out to you and says, come eat. Right? Because the time period for that name has come to an end. Especially like at the end of Ramadan when it's Eid al-Fitr, then the hukum for Ramadan has come to an end at that point, and now a new name is calling out to you on Eid al-Fitr. So then this name, which calls to him, takes over. So it continues in this world and the next. Hence, everything. So definitely like the divine name, As-Sabur, the patient one, calls to you in this world. But in the next world, As-Sabur won't call you because its hukum has come to an end. Especially in paradise, inshallah, right? Then it won't call you in paradise, right? Hence, everything other than God is called by a divine name to come to an engendered state, hal koni, to which that name seeks to attach it. If the object of the call responds, he is named obedient and becomes felicitous, sa'id. If he does not respond, he is named disobedient and becomes wretched, shaqi. You may object and say, just a second, please. Okay. You may object and say, how can a divine name call and the engendered thing refuse to respond, given that it is weak and must accept the divine power, right? Because you can't refuse God's call. I think we've actually read this, but I don't mind reading it again if we actually did read this. We did read this, actually. We did.
Yeah, we did.
So let's just repeat it very quickly then. You may object and say, how can a divine name call and the engendered thing refuse to respond, given that it is weak and must accept the divine power? We will answer, it does not refuse to respond in respect of itself and its own reality, since it is constantly overpowered. But since it is under the overpowering sway of a divine name, the name does not let it respond to the name which calls to it. Hence, there's a conflict among the divine names. However, the names are equals. So the ruling property belongs to the actual possessor, which is the name in whose hand the thing is when the second name calls to it. The possessor is stronger through the situation. So the divine name that already has you is stronger than the divine name that's calling you. You may object, then why is a person taken to task for refusal? Yeah, we answer because he claims the refusal for himself and does not ascribe it to the divine name which controls him. And I might have said this before. So why is he punished? Because he ascribes the action to himself. But actually, if you are like a particular wali or mystic, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you unveiling of all the actions you have to do in future, then you're not punished. You're just carrying out what your destiny is supposed to be. You may object. The situation stays the same, since he refuses only because of the overpowering sway of a divine name. The person who's called refused because of the name. We answered that is true, but he is ignorant of that. So he's taken to task for his ignorance, for the ignorance belongs to himself. You may object, but his ignorance derives from a divine name whose properties govern him. Then Ibn Arabi says, no. Ignorance is a quality pertaining to non-existence, amr adami. It is not ontological, it's not wujudi. But the divine names bestow only existence. Uh, they do not bestow non-existence. So the ignorance belongs to the very self of him who was called. And we talked about that last time. Okay, so now I think this is, now we actually start reading something new. In another context, Ibn al-Arabi explains that the wages, the ajr, mentioned in the Quran are paid to those who perform supererogatory works, nawafil. Since human beings are God's slaves, abd mamluk, they are not paid wages for the acts which the religion makes obligatory for them, the farad. Though, of course, the master rewards his slaves in other ways. The root of this matter has to do with two kinds of servanthood, or ubudiyya. One toward the essence, and the other toward the divine names. The first is compulsory, itirari, while the second is voluntary, ikhtiyari. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Can I get a volunteer, please? Thank you, Zanira.
I can do. Oh.
Okay, so we can go with Zanira and then Hannah afterwards. Go ahead, Zanira. Thank you.
Where should I start?
The prophets are God's sincere servants.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The prophets are God's sincere servants, not being owned by their own caprice, hawa, or that of any of God's creatures, but they say, my wage falls only on Allah. This goes back to their entrance under the properties of the divine names, from whence wages are paid. Through compulsion, and in reality, they are the servants and the possession of the essence. But the divine names seek them to make their effects manifest through them, so they have free choice, ikhtiyar, in entering under whichever name they desire. The divine names know this, so the divine names designate wages for them. Each divine name wants this slave of the essence to choose to serve, khidmah, it rather than the other divine names. It says to him, enter under my command, for I will give you such and such. Then he remains in the service of that name until he is called by the Lord in respect of his servanthood to the essence. At that point, he abandons every divine name and undertakes the call of his Lord. Once he has done what he commands him to do, he returns to whichever name he pleases. That is why every person performs supererogatory works and worships as he desires until he hears the call to begin the obligatory prayer, iqamat al-salat. At that point, every supererogatory work is forbidden to him, and he must endeavor to perform the obligatory act for his Lord and Master. Then, when he finishes, he enters into any supererogatory work that he desires. In this situation, man is similar to the slave of a master with many sons. He is a compulsory servant of his master. When his master commands him, he does not occupy himself with anything but his command. But when he finishes with that, the sons of the master seek to make him their subject. Hence, they have to
Designate. Zanira, are you there?
Sorry, I'm just a little disoriented.
Okay. So,
Okay. It's here, yeah. Okay. Hence, they have to designate for him something that would make him want to serve them. Each son would love to take him into his own service in the time that he is free from the business of his master. Hence, they compete in giving him wages in order to have him devote himself exclusively to them. But he's free to choose which son to serve at that time. So man is the slave, the master is Allah, and the sons are the other divine names. When
that
he
would,
sees the servant,
sorry, Zanira, so that would really explain a lot of polytheistic myths too. Like, this is a really good explanation for many polytheistic myths. Very interesting. Yeah, Znira, go ahead.
When he sees the servant troubled and helps him, then it is known that the servant is subjected to the name helper. Hence, he will receive from helper the wage that it has designated for him. When he sees him weak in himself and he acts with gentleness towards him, then he is subjected to the name gentle. And so it goes with all the names. So verify, my friend, how you serve your Lord and Master. Possess correct knowledge concerning yourself and your Master, then you will be one of the men of knowledge who are deeply rooted in knowledge, الراسخون في العلم, the divine sages, al-hukama al-ilahiyun, and you will attain to the furthest degree and the highest place along with the messengers and the prophets. The
MashaAllah.
unity of
Wow.
the essence.
And any comments on that?
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Zanira. Go.
So he's likening or like he's creating a parallel. He's drawing a parallel between Nawafil, right? And Fard and the
Yeah.
names and Allah's essence. But we do have a choice. You kind of read the answer, but still, like in one way, we really don't have a choice whether Allah's gentle, like most people, right? Don't actually have a choice if we're which name we serve, unless, like, I guess we get to a certain maqam, inshallah. But so then, is it really fard? Like, is it really nafil or is it still fard? Like, even following the divine names, because we're still being, I don't want to say swayed, or yeah, like we still serve them, regardless of whether we know. And I feel like in order to choose, we must know, if you know what I mean.
You have relative freedom, so it's relative freedom. Even if it's not like ultimate freedom, you have relative freedom. So once you finish your obligatory duties, which is the salat, for example, you're free to do extra prayers, or you're free to do another act of worship in a different way, to give charity, or to even sleep. Because like when you make the niyyah, you get the reward for whatever action you do, even if it's mubah, right? Those are your choices. That's a choice, and choice is freedom. But there's no freedom. So there's definitely no freedom when there is an obligation. And just as how like there's an obligation to perform the Hajj at least once in your life, if you are capable of doing it. And let's say you reach an old age, and you have the means to travel, the Hajj is obligatory on you. You can't go anywhere else for your let's say your summer vacation. But once you've done the Hajj, maybe the following year, if Allah prolongs your life, you want to see the other Muslim countries and see their histories. In obedience to the command, Siru fil ard, travel throughout the earth and see what happened before you. That's your choice, and you choose whichever country you want. But Hajj comes first until you've done it, right? So it's like that.
So no,
So
but
here,
like I meant in terms of like someone.
so here, there's like relative freedom. Sorry, Zanira, go ahead.
If someone like chooses to go to sleep, I feel like that still might be like a manifestation of Allah's name, Ra'uf or Latif or something that's gentle. And so like they're still serving, one of the master, the son, whatever he calls the son names. But yeah, so like we just might not know it, right? So that's what I'm saying. So how are we not their slaves as well? Like not how are they not like how they're the sons and not also masters?
There's different degrees. So Ibn Arabi can get super complicated if you don't keep things clear. Here, he's talking about one specific degree, and it's very common to us. This degree he's talking about, which is just the degree of normal choice. So I'm gonna have a hard time resisting the power of sleep if it's 2 a.m., right? But let's say it's a Sunday, right? Or Friday, if that's your day off. It's Friday, and you're not at work, and it's midday. After the Salat al-Jum'ah, and I finish my prayer as a man, that's obligatory on me. I have the choice to take an extra nap. I don't, I have 3 kids. So I'm powerless in that situation. But let's say I had the choice. I could take a nap, or I could do something with my day. Those are choices. And the divine name that's responsible for sleeping can try and call me as much as he wants, but I am under the property of another name at that moment because I'm fresh and awake. Whichever name controls sleeping is more powerful at night, no? So there's still a choice. But there's never, so although I feel like your question touches upon an interesting point, Nira, there's never complete freedom. There is never complete freedom from the names. This is correct.
Right, that's
Hannah.
what I was going for. Like, I feel like it's not possible because there's no, like there's nothing that's not a manifestation of a name. There's no act, or there's not even a thought that we can have that's not a manifestation of a name. So we're always controlled, like, in a way. I mean, and we're
You
Abdul
are.
Mamluk too.
You
Yeah.
are. You are. You can never leave the names, but you get relative choice between them. You do get relative choice between them, relatively speaking.
But do you think
Yes,
that's
Hannah.
for everybody, or only people who are like aware and?
No. Everybody gets those choices, but there are consequences to either knowing that or not knowing that. But everyone gets choices. I mean, how else does accountability happen on the day of judgment? I decided to wrong this person, right? I did it through my own freedom. And for Ibn Arabi, the true point of differentiation lies in knowledge. Did you know that action was predestined for you or not? 99.9% of us don't know that until it happens. And that's not worth anything. So did you know that you were compelled to do the action or not? No one knows that. And furthermore, since, as you said, Zanira, most people aren't mystics, so we, generally speaking, own our actions, good or bad, generally speaking. I like to put the blame on someone else, but I do own the action, whether I did something good or bad. I own it. It is my claim to ownership of that action which makes me accountable. But the awliya, especially the mighty ones, disown all actions, even though courtesy demands they take the blame in the right places. Just as the prophets say, لا علم لنا, we have no knowledge. Also, لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله, there's no movement, there's no strength or power or movement save in God, who does everything. Hannah.
Yeah, that was all very interesting, mashallah. Well, when you said about it's interesting how it explains different myths. I'm thinking you mean, for example, like the gods in Olympus fighting over who was
Yes.
that kind of thing. Yeah, okay. And then when he's in the passage after that, when he, capital H, sees the servant troubled and helps him, then it is known that the servant is subjected to the name helper. So we just thought that because that he refers to the essence, isn't it? Who are the essence? So it seems like it's putting it back in it's giving that allocation of who, response back in the ball court of the essence rather than leaving it up to the names here. He will receive.
Oh, good. ادعوا الله أو ادعوا الرحمن أينما تدعوه له الأسماء الحسنى له, because له, so that's why the Quran is super precise. له, to him.
Yeah.
To him, all the names go back.
Yeah.
So that's
it
exactly
seems like that's what he's doing in that chapter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Yes, absolutely. All the names are under the authority, if you like, of the essence. Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'd be a mushrik. Each
Yeah.
name has its own independent essence and is separate from the other one. That's shirk. Yeah, that's how shirk comes. Yeah, that would be shirk. But when you say no, all the names are under one essence, then that's tawheed.
So then this last bit is he's saying, so verify my friend. Oh, we haven't read that bit, have we? We stopped, didn't we? Let's read the next. Did we read that last?
We did read it. Yes, Zanira read it. Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, so verify my friend how you serve your Lord and Master. So then these are going to be the highest of divine sages. I mean, it's like saying, you know, like your question, Zanira's question, how are we even going to know that, you know? And then it goes back to the one about he claims for himself. He claims the refusal for himself and does not ascribe it to the divine name.
Yes.
So the ability to know. And then at the beginning, he's saying the prophets are God's sincere servants, not being owned by their own caprice. And they say my wage, and he's talking about the prophets at the beginning of this and how they are able to, and how they respond to the names and move in these different levels. And then we're trying to talk about ourselves in relation to this. And do we even, you know, how we can't, I mean, I haven't got no idea most of the time what name I'm under apart from my ego. So there you go. But astaghfirullah. So and even that's me claiming it for myself. So anyway,
sometimes you just have to let what he's saying wash over you until you find which part of what he's saying is useful to you in specific. And it just kind of like trickles or like a rain cloud. It drizzles onto the earth of your mind, and then it just percolates the earth until something grows. Because he is an ocean, and you can't take in the entire ocean, which is very true. Although what's interesting is at the beginning of the section, William Chick is using all these passages to illustrate why there's conflict in the cosmos. So that's the first point to take away. And then every other point is just for whoever finds something useful from these passages, right? But the first prime point is that he just wanted to show you that all conflict in the cosmos has its roots in the divine, specifically the divine names, which is very useful for shuhud. Because certainly if you are a serious spiritual seeker, what you are looking for is to only see Allah, His will, and His actions in the cosmos, and just to see Him. Otherwise, you're not really a muwahhid. You're like, I kind of acknowledge La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, but I'm giving power and agency to every other being on earth. That's bad spirituality, no? And so when it comes to conflict, it becomes hard to see where is God in this. So then Ibn Arabi shows you, and this is like a really fantastic way of illustrating that. Especially if you want to be on the path of shuhud. Yeah, so Zanira and then someone else. Ghad, yeah, okay, Zanira, then Ghada, go ahead.
So first of all, when you said disowning, like one's actions, it reminded me of the name Bari. And also, like, I think Ibrahim alayhi salam or some of the prophets say, Ana bari mimma ta'malun to their
Yes.
people. Like, I'm not responsible. But yeah, I feel like we should say that. I mean, yeah, about our own actions as well. So I was wondering, does the sheikh use, because so I'm wondering if like the image, right, or the metaphor, but I mean image of like, for instance, the mirror, obviously, right? So like we're supposed to be a mirror for the names, or the heart is supposed to mirror for the names. But then this whole analogy of master and sons of the master and a slave. But I'm wondering, does he ever use like the image of a channel, like a human being trying to be, like all the names are trying to be channel, like whether it's a channel of light or water even perhaps, because I think Hannah would know. I think it's Sheikh Nazim who said like something about like just channeling that we awliya channel like large amounts of water, like and he gave like the example of, I think, the Niagara or some waterfall, and how not everybody can just directly, take that much energy. So awliya are like channels of water, and they like kind of slow it down. But I was wondering if he ever uses the metaphor or the image of a channel where the
It
names wants to.
completely sounds like Ibn Arabi. If I think of a specific example, I'll tell you, but that sounds like him completely. I don't see an issue with that image whatsoever.
And
I
what would
just
the
do,
Arabic word be for that, for channel?
I'd have to think about it. I would have to think about it.
I don't know if it's, I don't think he actually said the word channel. I don't think that's really important. But yeah, I mean, he says like that, or he usually uses the words more like a transformer, like a power station, and you've got you don't plug your hairdryer into the power station. It gets transformed, and the AC, the power gets reduced so you can take it, or you wouldn't go to the Niagara Falls and stand there with a cup and trying to fill it up, because the power you go through, take it out of a tap. So the awliya Allah are like the taps or the transformers who bring down those levels of that, like standing from Allah through the Prophet through the awliya Allah, and then down through to us, so that our systems can carry it, rather than being zapped by the
Yeah,
power.
totally. So another way of thinking about channels is like how wide or narrow a channel is, or how strong or weak a transformer is. That reminds me of bandwidth, right? How much something can take or not take, how little it can take or how much it can take. So the word for that is qabil and qawabil. That's the word, which is completely in line with the idea of a channel. Qabil and qawabil, which is simply receptacle. That's what it is. But I just want to say, Zanina, what you mentioned earlier on about we should all say that we disown our actions. It has to be reflected in our life. So one should strive to see that your actions are not your actual actions. This is a good spiritual practice. It's a very good one. But it has to manifest fruits. If it does not manifest fruits, Allah doesn't accept that excuse on the day of judgment. Because Ibn Arabi says this literally. Like, there might be a servant if Allah wants to find an excuse for him, and he likes that servant. Allah will tell the servant, don't worry about it. You were just the receptacle for the properties and manifestations of my names. That's all it was. Don't worry about it. You're fine. But if a servant tries to tell Allah, I was just the manifestation for the property of your names. That's all it was. Allah will tell him no. he won't accept that excuse. If it comes from you, it has to come from him. But you knowing that it all comes from the names, it should manifest the fruits of that in your ibadah in life. So someone who's like an alcoholic should be deeply regretful and says, I'm being overpowered by this addiction I have. And he sheds tears and has regret and pleads with Allah to spare him and have mercy on him. Then Allah will. He will do that. And he'll be very gentle with him. But it has to manifest fruits, right? So Ghada, and then Sidi Omar. I'm sorry, Omar. I saw your question in chat. So I want to come to it. So Ghada and then Omar.
My question is just a little bit from the beginning. When you said taqabul, is it taqabul or tanazu? It stayed in my mind. Taqabul is
It's
like kind of
it's
facing each other, but tanaza is more like a conflict.
it's both. No, but the idea of mutaqabil is they're facing each other, but they're opposites. Because when you face each other, you're facing opposites, like you're opposed to one another, right? So mutaqabil is I'm facing you.
And
But
tanazu?
تنازع يعني هو زي خلاف.
Because now what I think the paragraph before, when Arabi says it's tanazu'.
Yes, correct, yes.
Hmm.
It is تنازع, and it's also, talk about names that are متقابلة, that they're like opposite to each other. So like Ghafoor is opposite to Muntaqim, for example.
Mm. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Wait, Omar and then Zanira. Okay, Omar, so you wrote the question, right? Just let me read it. I don't really understand the benefit of knowing which name is behind which action of Allah or phenomena of existence. Well, those who are interested in really, so Ibn Arabi is talking about the highest spiritual seeker. If you really want to know what the prophets and messengers do, this is what they do. They pay attention to the names. And Ibn Arabi is from the highest seeker, so that's why he writes about this. And it really behooves us. It's very suitable for us to do it as some kind of a mental exercise, to be present in our thoughts, knowing that each thing that happens in existence comes from a divine name, and to be conscientious that there is a divine name, and to try and ask Allah to help us understand what it is, because this is part of the path of shuhud, of only seeing Allah in the cosmos. That's what it goes towards, CD. If someone does not want to be on the path of shuhud, then no, it's not necessary. But this person who wants to only see Allah, the manifestation of Allah's actions and His attributes in the cosmos, there's a huge benefit to doing that. So that's why all the awliya al-arifin, they all call to that, right? Because then you also get the benefit of that, the fruits of that on the day of judgment, right? You also get the fruits of that in this world, because the reason you want the reason you want to be able to distinguish between the names is so that you can give each situation its proper response. Do you see? So that you know in your mind and your heart that there's no voids in existence. Like existence isn't empty. So there's always a divine name. So I've got to respond to it correctly so that I get the fruit of that name in that moment. Because he gave you the reason already in the previous paragraph when he talks about the ajr. Each divine name has an ajr. So you want the ajr of that name. So you know which name it is. And you get the ajr of that name by responding to it correctly. So for example, the prophets say, I don't ask any ajr from you, like the specific divine names. My wage is only upon Allah, ism al-jama'. I don't want the ajr of the divine names, I want the ajr of Allah, who is ism al-jama'. It's the name that brings together all the names, right? I know the power and beauty of the names, like calling on them, but that seems different from what we were talking about. Yeah, that's it. Okay, Zanira, can you make it a short question so we can continue reading, if it's possible?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what you because I've been looking into some words in Arabic. There are some words that are like their own opposites, and
Yes.
mutaqabil is actually one of them. So it can mean someone who's opposed, but it can also mean correspondent, and that there's an ayah in the Quran. وَنَزَعْنَا مَا فِي صُدُورِهِمْ مِنْ غِلٍّ إِخْوَانًا عَلَى سُرُرٍ مُتَقَابِلِينَ.
Oh, of
And
course,
so
yeah, yes.
yeah, so
But
here
it,
naza' and mutaqabilin are together, and here it means like they're going to be friendly with each other and looking at each other like in a friendly way.
But depends on the context, right? Depends on the context, right? Yeah.
But I feel like it's a union of opposites as well, like part of the Haira.
Maybe, but I just want to keep it simple. Like in the context of this chapter and these passages, it means opposite. But you're totally right. In a different context, it can mean union and something that's like corresponding. So the unity of the essence. Hannah, can you read that if that's okay?
Yeah, when we read what Ibn al-Arabi has to say about the multiplicity and conflict demanded by the divine names, or when we meet his personifications of the names, we may forget for a moment that the names are multiple only in properties, not in existence, since each is identical in existence with the essence. In respect of the divine self, the one entity, there can be no multiplicity. But in respect of the relationships which are established with creation, because of the fact that the self is a God, numerous names and attributes can be envisaged. Each relationship we take into account, each divine name, has special effects and properties among the creatures which distinguish it from other relationships. On the basis of these properties, we can say that one name is ranked above another. In other words, one relationship is different from another. Since there is no multiplicity in God, there is no hierarchy in God himself. This is why the Shaykh can deny ranking in degrees in the divine things, al-ilahiyat, just as he affirms that it derives from them. On the one hand, he has in view the relationships inasmuch as they designate specific qualities demanding a variety of effects and properties, and on the other, he has in view the identity of the names with the divine essence. There can be no ranking in degrees in the divine things, since a thing cannot be considered superior to itself. The divine realities and relationships cannot be ranked one over another, except insofar as they are attributed to something in the cosmos, since they have no ranking in their essence. There can be no ranking in degrees among the divine names for two reasons. First, the relationship of the names to the essence is one relationship, so there is no ranking of degrees in this relationship. If the levels were ranked one over the other in respect of the divine realities by which they are supported, there would be superiority among the names of God. Hence, some of God's names would be more excellent than others, but no one says this on the basis of law or reason. The greater inclusiveness of a name does not prove its greater excellence. There can only be greater excellence in that which has the characteristic of accepting something, but which does not go to the effort of accepting it, or in that which may be described by something, but is not so described. Second, the divine names go back to his essence, and the essence is one. But ranking in degrees demands manyness, and a thing cannot be considered superior to itself. Shall I carry on? A distinction can be drawn between how God relates to the universe as the knowing and how he relates to it as the powerful. This is especially clear in mutually contradictory names such as the Forgiver and the Avenger. But the essence, as essence, is related to all things in an identical manner. Hence the name Allah, the name that denotes the essence as such, is related to everything in the cosmos in the same way. The divine relationship between Allah and all creatures is one relationship within which there is no ranking in degrees, since ranking in degrees demands manyness. The relationship of Allah to all things is one relationship with no ranking in degrees. You will not see this relationship predominating in any of the creatures, whether of the higher or lower plenum. It does not establish ranking or preponderation in the cosmos. But inasmuch as the cosmos is the cosmos, some parts of the cosmos preponderate over other parts, and disparity becomes manifest within it. So multiplicity is not an intrinsic attribute of the names, only of that in which they display their properties. In themselves, the names remain one, since God is one. The names of the real do not become plural and multiple except within the loci of their manifestation. But in respect to him, the property of number does not rule over them. What separates fossil a thing is that which distinguishes it from association with something else. As for the divine names, separation takes place through what they designate in respect of being plural in number. Since they accept manyness, they need separation. First, they are separate from the essence of the named, lest their specific meanings be attributed to it. Second, they are separate in respect to that within which their effects become manifest. Manyness in the names is occasioned by that in which the effects are displayed not by the name as agent, which is that which produces the effects. So the effects are the multiplicity of relationships with the one entity. This separation is in the effects, not in the names, nor in the named, nor in that within which the effects appear. Okay, that was the end of that chapter, that section.
Yeah, so that seems like quite clear. And the next time we can just go on to names of incomparability, and names of acts. So Tenzin Tashbih, basically. Oh, actually, we can read this page and then we'll finish the chapter. Oh,
Should
okay.
I finish it? Do you want me to read it as well, or somebody else want to read?
I'm happy either way.
All right then. I'm reading from the book. If that's maybe you're wondering why I'm not. Anyway, so I've got the book here. Names of
it's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Bismillah. Names of incomparability and names of acts. Muslim theologians often classify the divine names into categories. Ibn al-Arabi is no exception, and he provides several different ways of classifying the names in his works. For the practical purpose of gaining an insight into his basic teachings, it is sufficient to grasp a single basic distinction, one which will come up in many different contexts. That between the names which negate, salb, various descriptions from God, and other names which affirm, ithbat, that he possesses attributes. These two kinds of names are most commonly called the names of incomparability and the names of the acts. Acts, it will be remembered, is a theological designation for the creatures. As was seen in the first chapter, the divine presence includes the essence, the attributes, and the acts. The attributes or names are the barzakh between the essence and the acts, but these names can be divided into two categories depending on the type of relationship which they designate between the essence and the cosmos. In the first case, they negate various qualities from the essence. In the second, they affirm that the essence, inasmuch as it is a God, possesses various qualities. Incomparability, tanzi, signifies that the essence cannot be judged, gauged, or known by any of the creatures. It is normally contrasted with similarity, tashbih, which signifies that God, as the possessor of the names, establishes certain relationships with the things, and that these can be known and judged to a certain degree. Weird, I don't know why it's doing that. Strange thing. The names of acts thus demand the similarity of the created things with God. The divine presence is a name for an essence, attributes, and acts, or if you prefer, you can say for attributes of acts and attributes of incomparability. The names that demand incomparability are the names which the essence demands in itself, while the names which demand similarity are the names which the essence demands inasmuch as it is a God. The names of incomparability are those such as independent, al-Ghani, and one, al-Ahad, and all those which can only be possessed by him, while the names of similarity are those such as compassion, forgiven, and everything by which the servant may truly be qualified in respect of being a locus of manifestation, not in respect of his own entity. There are two different kinds of divine attributes. Divine attributes which require the declaration of incomparability, like all great, al-Kabir, and all high, al-Ali, and divine attributes which require the declaration of similarity, such as the magnificent, al-Mutakabbir, the self-exalted, al-Muta'ali, and everything by which the real described himself, and by which the servant is also qualified. The names are of two kinds. One kind is all lights and war. These are the names that denote ontological qualities. Another kind is all darknesses, zulam. These are the names that denote incomparability. We have no knowledge of God except through attributes of incomparability or attributes of act. He supposes that he has knowledge of positive attributes of the self, sifa nafsiya thubutiya. Oh no, sorry. He who supposes that he has knowledge of positive attributes of the self has supposed wrongly, for such an attribute would define had him, but his essence has no definition. This is a door locked to engendered existence, al-kawn, a door that cannot be opened. It belongs only to the real.
Okay,
That's it.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. We might have gone through that a bit fast, so we can. I mean, I encourage people to like go back and ponder those passages a bit more closely. But are there any questions?
I have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, when you say cosmos,
Yes.
what does the cosmos stands for here?
كل ما
Cosmos and
سوى
existence.
كل ما سوى الله.
But how do you translate it into Arabic, cosmos?
No, well, the word that they use is al-alam, al-alam.
Al-alam.
Yep. But really it means كل ما سوى Allah. So the alam includes the akhirah. The alam includes dunya and akhirah. It's not just dunya. It's كل ما سوى Allah. So even angels, alam includes angels. It includes the jabarut and the malakut. Anything كل ما سوى Allah, that's the alam.
And then existence, as now it was said, it's al-kawn. Existence, it's related more like to physical existence.
Not necessarily. It can also be to
Wujud.
yeah. So kawn is more specific than wujud. You could say that wujud is being, like the French verb être, to be, l'être. So that's wujud, right? To be, and then kawn, existence. It's more about what you see in front of you, as opposed to like the I don't know, like let's say the Ayana Thabita, for example, right? So Kawn is more like what you see in front of you. So Kawn is existence, and Wujud is being, because like even like the Arwah can be, even the Ayana Thabita can be, even God is. So He shares in Wujud. He is, but God is not in Kawn really, but He is Wujud.
So it can be like al-kawn is within the wujud.
Yeah, sure. If you want to think of it that way, yes. Kawn is existence, and wujud is being.
Thank you.
I know it's a bit confusing, right? Because you use lots of words. Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay. Any last questions? Zanir, go ahead.
Could you please scroll up? Because when Hannah was reading, there was something that I forgot what it was, but it was like the divine name of, I think, existence. And I was wondering what name that is. Yeah, the divine presence is a name for the essence, for an essence. What does the divine presence mean in Arabic?
الحضرة. Okay, الحضرة الإلهية.
Okay, Jazakallah.
الله يبارك فيكي. So actually, even each divine name is its own presence. Like you talk about الحضرة الرحمانية, الحضرة القهارية, الحضرة النورانية, حضرة النور, حضرة اللطيف, حضرة الكريم, حضرة الرؤوف. Each one is its own hadra. And then Sayyidina Harun alayhi salam, he came from Hadrat al-Rahamut. The hadra, the presence of the superlative rahmas. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Then I'll see you next week for Fusus al-Hikam, where we reach the climax. of the fuss for at least another 2-3 sessions, I think. And then we'll be done with that fuss. So just let me stop recording.